Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and I am using one of the new Susie's Doodles in full bloom pre-printed papers that I just showed in a haul video yesterday. So I've already taped it down to a hardboard with some painter's tape. This helps keep it from warping too much since I'm going to do some watercolor on this. And I pulled out my Mission Gold watercolors this time, and I decided to go with kind of a light hand and do the background first. So I mixed up one of the blues with a fair bit of water, so it was light blue, because I'm following the color challenge for this week's Color Throwdown challenge, which is blue, green, and a really light yellow. And you saw there in the beginning, I went online and looked on my phone at pictures of calla lilies, just to kind of give me an idea of how I wanted to paint these, because I wanted to keep them mostly white. But I noticed in a lot of the pictures, like a lot of calla lilies have a lot of yellow to them as well. They can come in different colors, but I wanted to go mostly white to go with this color challenge. So I did my background first, and I purposely just kind of modeled the colors in that. I didn't do, a soft wash or anything like that. That's the one thing I really like about watercolor, is it doesn't need to be perfect, and you can kind of be a little bit splotchy and messy with it, and that just makes it easier. So once the background, I dried it with my heat tool, and then I went on to do the leaves, and I did one layer of color first with just a little bit more water. Then I dried it with my heat tool, and then I added a bit more watercolor and deepened the same color of green and went in and added just some darker areas. And then while it was still a little bit wet, I actually darkened it just a little bit more, just to give it a little more definition, because otherwise it just kind of ends up looking really, really flat. That's something, the more practice I get with watercolor, the more I do it, you start kind of figuring out how to add more layers and get a little bit more definition and just keep things from looking so aka boring, I guess. So once I added in some more of the green, I went in and mixed up a yellow, and I added a little bit of white to this too, just to give it a more kind of pastel sort of a look. So I started adding in a yellow, and you can see here, this is where I started looking at my phone just to see how the yellow appears in these, and it's more around the outside. So I just added the really pale yellow first, just kind of as a wash around the outside of all these calla lilies. And then I went in and darkened the yellow a little bit and added a little bit more, just to deepen some of the areas, and added that closer to the bottom of all of these. And then once I've got that painted in, I darkened the yellow just even more, just to add to kind of the stamens in the center of these. And then this final bit, I mixed up one of the black watercolor in here very, very lightly, like mostly water, barely any black, just get a very, very, very pale gray, just to add a little bit of definition into the centers of these, just to give that little bit of shading, because nothing's really completely flat white. So I did that, and then I went in with just some clean water and pulled it out a bit so it's not very noticeable. So once I was done with all of my watercoloring, I made sure everything was completely dry, and then I decided to spray it with my distress sprayer. These watercolors still, because they're watercolor, it's still going to react a little bit with water. So I sprayed it with my distress sprayer and then used my paper towel to kind of pick it up, and it just modeled everything just a little bit more, gave it a little bit more, texture and whatnot. And then once I was done with all of that and made sure it was completely dry, I can peel off my painter's tape. Now these panels that they're printed on, they're already A2 size, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So it's just up to personal preference, but I didn't worry too much about the tape because I wanted to die cut this so I could put it on an A2 sized card. So I just quickly peeled off the tape, and then I'm going to run this through my die cut machine with the largest of the My Favorite Things wonky stitched rectangle dynamics. So it cuts it slightly smaller, plus it adds all that fine little fun stitch detail all around the edges, which I absolutely love. So I did that, and then I decided I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer. So I pulled out my Spectrum Noir Clear Overlay glitter pen here. And this will reactivate your watercolor. Watercolor activates with water. This has got, moisture in it. So I started with the lightest area first, like the whiter areas, and then I went on to the yellow, and this is when I started scribbling off any of the color I was moving around onto this paper towel here, because you're just reactivating everything. You can definitely end up messing it up or, moving colors where you don't want them to. So I just added a quick little layer on top of all of the flowers here, just making sure to scribble off any of the color I was picking up with the brush. And I'll turn my flashlight on my phone here so you can see the sparkle it gives. I absolutely love this. Love it. So yeah, just gives it some nice sparkle that you don't really notice until it hits the light. So once I was done with that, I die cut some green leaf cardstock from Simon Says Stamp with their Thankful die. And then it has the kind of bubble outline that I die cut from some vellum. So I'm going to pop this out of my die here. And once I've got all the interior pieces out, I'm going to use my multimedia matte adhesive and just apply that along the back of this die cut. And then I'm going to just grab it with my reverse tweezers here so that I can center it on top of this vellum die cut. So it's got its nice little vellum border all around it. So once I've got that adhered, I'm going to flip this over and I'm going to apply the adhesive in the exact same way just behind the cardstock die cut, because this adhesive does show through vellum. So I just apply a really thin line just on the thickest areas. I never, with any of my word die cuts, I don't bother applying adhesive to the entire die cut. Just to the thickest areas is more than enough. So got that in place and then adhered that over top of my image here. I'd originally thought about using black cardstock for the word, but I kind of like how it looks with the green. It somewhat blends in and yet it just works. It just works. But just to make it stand out just a little bit more, I couldn't resist adding some more of the Spectrum Noir clear sparkle overlay. So I added that to the die cut. So same thing. It darkened the cardstock a tiny little bit. Plus it gives it that fun shimmer, which I just absolutely love. So then for my card base, I grabbed a piece of lemon chiffon cardstock, also from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm cutting the sheet in half lengthwise, so it's 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'm going to score it at 5 1/2 with my Teflon bone folder. And I'm going to press down the crease really well with the bone folder. And then I pulled out my Mini Misty because I wanted to use this really large sentiment stamp from their Thankful Heart stamp set. And I wanted to make sure I got this stamped perfectly. So I'm going to put the card base into my Mini Misty here. And I'm going to center up this large stamp on the center. And I'm glad I did because I actually didn't stamp it perfectly the first time. You can't really tell as much in the video, but in real life, the center of the stamp was all blotchy. So I'm inking it up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And I'm going to close the lid of the Misty, stamp it. That's when I saw I didn't stamp it perfectly. So inked it up a second time, so I could stamp it again and make sure it's stamped properly. So once that's stamped, I can take this out of my Misty, and I applied foam tape to the back of the watercolor piece. And I'm going to adhere that to my card base here. And then once that's adhered, I decided I wanted to add some fun little embellishments, and I just can't stop using the Studio Katya sparkling crystals. Love them. They're so pretty. A lot of people have been asking me about them. They're not sequins. They're hard to tell in video. They really are, but they're just basically, they look like flat-backed rhinestones, really. They're just pretty, especially for florals. They're kind of almost like water droplets, yet not totally round. So I adhered a bunch of those into place with my multimedia matte and my crystal katana, and that finished off the card. So you can see all the sparkle and shimmer. I just love it. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post with links to the color challenge, links to all the supplies used. All that info will be in the description box directly below the video. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!